NACDL is the association of the nation's criminal defense bar.
So I just want to ask you, how many of you, if you're reading your local paper and you see, a headline about a murder and someone has been arrested, how many of you hope, oh gosh, I hope that guy will hire me or his family will hire me? Or you're in the public defender's office and you say, great, it's my turn to get a really good case. How many of you, if it's a pump and dump security fraud case, you go, oh, there's someone who can actually pay before they freeze the assets, and you want to get that case. Now, how many of you, when you see the headline, boyfriend arrested for sexually molesting a 5-year-old, go, ooh, I hope I get that one? Okay, 1. Anyone else? 2. Anyone else? 3. Okay, why is it that the rest of us are delighted to cross-examine a snitch, a homicide detective, we've got all of our impeachment set up, but we don't really want to get hired when someone is charged with sexually assaulting a 5-year-old? Why not? Why are these cases different? And I would suggest that they're different because first, we react to them as moms, dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, neighbors, and we're pretty horrified at the idea. Somehow murder seems okay to us. We understand why people commit murder. We're very sympathetic to people who use drugs. Now that white suburban kids are doing it, we now realize it's a health crisis, when before it was a very serious crime. And so we're ready to represent those people. But somehow child molest cases affect us differently. And I would suggest that that's the first thing that we have to acknowledge, is that they are different. They're different for us. They are different for juries. And sometimes we don't like our clients. Sometimes we are terrified. So first we have to acknowledge how they impact us as humans, as neighbors, as parents, as grandparents. And secondly, as lawyers, okay? What don't we like about the case as lawyers? We're terrified, right? How many of you really enjoy cross-examining a 5-year-old? 1, 2 people, okay, out of a room of several hundred. Why? We're afraid the child is going to cry. We're afraid the jury will hate us. They probably will. We're afraid of bad publicity. Afraid we'll screw up. We're afraid our client is guilty. Or more terrifying, we are terrified, horrified at the thought that an innocent person is charged with a crime that, if he or she is convicted, is most likely, at least in my state, is going to result in imprisonment for life. It may be imprisonment in a solitary confinement to protect the individual from either the guards or the other inmates or both. Even in a case, my husband and I tried a case for about a month back in March, in case you wondered why one of the reasons I retired from the practice of law. Even though our client was acquitted, he was innocent, and it was terrifying. And he went from being a certified social worker, he's now working at Staples for $10 an hour, because even though he was not guilty, he was innocent, he was found not guilty. Every job that he has applied for, they Google him, and when they find out that he was charged with, in New York we have a really great name for it, predatory sexual assault of a child, he's not interviewed, or the job is not extended to him. So these are the kind of cases I would suggest to you where a defense of they can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt just doesn't work. I mean, close your eyes for a moment And just imagine, instead of being a criminal defense lawyer, you're on a jury. And the person who is charged with molesting a group of small children in the playground near your house. And you think he probably did it. You're almost certain that he did it, but there's some problems with the government's case. How many of you vote not guilty? Okay, you can put your hands down and open your eyes. And I won't tell you which of the people sitting next to you would not vote not guilty if they thought their child was at risk. And I can assure you that if there is a group of criminal defense lawyers who would find it difficult to give the presumption of innocence or proof beyond a reasonable doubt to someone they thought probably was a child molester, I assure you that no jury in America, or at least in any of the, I think, 22 states I've been in, would find the person not guilty. So it's not going to work. So what can we do about it? The first thing is, and we're going to get to cross-examination in a few minutes, but I first want to talk about what happens when you get one of these cases. You need to be prepared. How many of you have children or grandchildren? How many of you don't have children or grandchildren? Okay, for those of you who have your hands up, now go back to the people who do have grandchildren or children. Okay, those of you who don't, no, everybody who does, raise your hand. Okay, for those of you who don't, find someone who lives in your district, or find people in your office. I can assure you that people who have children may very well loan them to you for free. In fact, some of them may pay you to take the children. So if you don't have children, or you don't have children the age of the child that you are going to cross-examine, rent one. I assure you they're really cheap. And get one, spend time with the child. Find out, are they watching Dora the Explorer? Are they watching, Daniel the Tiger? If you're going to cross-examine a 5-year-old and you don't know who Daniel the Tiger is, you are not prepared. So you need to know what's on TV, what's on video games, and what's in the child's preschool. So you need to learn about children in general. What concept do 5-year-olds have about time? What is their developmental level? What is their language level and understanding? What is their understanding of time? Because remember, and I'm sure that this is true in your jurisdiction as well as mine, that there are very relaxed rules. We call it the bad dude rule in New York, which means that if it's a child molest case, the fact that it happens sometime during the summer, sometime during the school year, sometime during the last 18 years, is sufficient to plead. So you need to know, does the child actually have a concept of time? You need to learn about this child in particular. Very often, the child is the stepchild of your client, the child of the girlfriend of your client, one of the kids in the preschool. So you may very well have lots of resources to learn about this child in particular. Your client, his family members, the neighbors, the teachers at the preschool. So you need to find out, you need to go to the preschool. We're going to be talking in a few minutes about the props, and if you can get props that are similar to what is at the child's preschool, you will immediately set the child at ease and have a much easier time of cross-examination. The most important thing in terms of developing your theory and your theme of the case is that you have to answer the 2 questions that the jury asks in every single case of child sexual assault. What are they? Why would the child say it if it wasn't true? And, why did they tell it? What's the other one? It's a 5-year-old. Why is it your client? That's part of why would they say it about your client. But what's the more? Why would they lie is one. What's the second one? How does a child have this information? Exactly right. How does a 5-year-old know that white stuff came out of his pee-pee unless it actually happened? Okay, so you have to answer those 2 questions. How does the child know about sex? And Why would the child say this if it wasn't true? Now, we talked a lot, different people have talked about theory and theme. I will suggest to you that there are only two possible theories, reasons, legal reasons why your client is not guilty. I'm taking away the case, if anyone has the case of a stranger who grabs the child at a park or grabs the child at a McDonald's, play slide area, maybe then you might have a mistaken identification. In 35 years of trying these cases, I've never had that case. Typically what you have, identity is not an issue. It's dad, it's stepdad, it's the boyfriend, it's the principal, it's the daycare worker, okay? So typically your defense is going to be either the child is saying something he or she knows to be untrue. In other words, the child is lying. Okay, when does that happen? Typically with older children. Teenagers, the case that Terry and I tried in March, it was a teenager who hated her stepdad. She didn't want mom to get married to him. She didn't like the rules that he enforced, and she knew that the one way to get out of it was to say that he had molested her. She knew she was telling a lie, and she told it over and over and over again. Okay, so that's one. A more typical with young children, which is what we're going to focus on today, is that the child is saying something that is factually untrue. Okay, and it's important that we are precise about our words because the child is not lying. Okay, a lie is something that someone tells, they know that it is untrue, and they are doing it typically with a bad motive. Okay, a young child who is saying something that is factually untrue is not lying. And why that is so important is because the cross-examination of the child witness has to be viewed within the context of the entire trial. So how many of you try child molest cases on a regular basis? Okay, so the rest of you have something to look forward to. So typically what happens, for those of you who try these on a regular basis, you know that the jury selection goes something like this. Now, sir, do you have small children? Raise your hand if you're in this row here, if you have a child. Okay, how old is your child, ma'am?
I have a 3.5-year-old.
Okay, 3.5. Anybody have like a 5 to 7-year-old? Anyone? Okay, how old is your child? Go ahead, Nicole, you can do it. An 8-year-old, yes. And can you tell when your 8-year-old is saying something, like, does he ever get in a fight with maybe his sister? Okay, and how old's his sister?
10 and 12.
Okay, so 10 and 12. And do they ever, like, one person says that one started the fight and the other says the other started the fight? Every time. And how do you decide, how can you tell which of your children is really telling the truth? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes can you? And how? How consistent? So as in a typical jury selection, what would happen is that one mom would say, oh, his face gets red. Oh, she won't look me in the eye. Oh, they start to fidget. Okay, and so then the prosecutor argues in closing argument, look, mom knows when the kid is lying or telling the truth. And you saw, this child didn't fidget, she was able to look you in the eye, all of the indicia. There's no indicia that the child is saying something untrue. The reason for that is because the child is not lying. Okay, so it's very important that you draw that distinction. The other thing a prosecutor will do is get up an opening statement and say, and Miss Shanks is going to call this poor victim a liar. Okay, and the jury all looks like, maybe we should kill her as well as her client, okay? So if that happens to you, you want to jump up immediately and say, ladies and gentlemen, I absolutely am not going to call the child a liar. She's saying something that's not true. And the prosecutor's going, I object, Your Honor, she's testifying. I say, Your Honor, I'm only responding to the scurrilous, attack that she made on me. Okay, so don't allow that. You're not going to be calling the child a liar. You're going to be saying that what the child says is not accurate, is not true, didn't happen. But it is important that your words be precise. Okay. How does it happen? Okay, and that will be part of your theory. One too many, good touch, bad touch. Everyone else in the preschool is saying it. A well-motivated but ill-trained child protective service worker. A police officer who's on the special victims unit. A child who simply is too young to tell any straight story, or a false memory has been implanted in the child, typically either by a vicious grown-up in the house or by a CPS worker, child protective services worker, or a police officer. What is the theme of the case? The emotional hook, what Lisa was talking about on the first day, what Larry was talking about. This is a case with two victims. A child who is made to believe that she was molested when she wasn't, and my client, a man who was charged with a crime he did not commit. Okay? This is a case that's not about a crime, it's about how horrible a custody case can be. Emily didn't want a stepfather, and she knew the one way she could get rid of him, and that's what she did. Okay? So, cross-examination. With teens, sometimes some of the techniques that we have talked about over the last day and a half will work. So a 17-year-old you can talk to about prior inconsistent statements. You can certainly talk to a teen about bias and motive. You didn't like your stepdad. On Facebook, you called him some pretty bad names. Let's talk about what you called him. Sometimes you can use it if the prosecutor puts up a teen, as they did in our case, and pretended like she was this sweet young thing. She was 12 years old, and they had her all dressed up like she was about 8. And she said she knew nothing about sex at all, except, when her stepfather molested her. And we were able to find on Facebook, she did these YouTube videos, and she did things on how to put makeup on, eyeshadow and mascara, and she did her hair. And, it was kind of typical teen stuff until we found the ones that said, dicks are pretty too. And she had penises that she put mascara and eyeshadow on. And then she had another one talking about her friend doing a lap dance. Okay, so that kind of undercut the she's a sweet young thing who doesn't know anything and helped answer the question, how could she know about sex if our client hadn't molested her? But young children is now where we're going to focus today. And we have to have different methods than we use with homicide detectives, with informants, with the president, with people who give inconsistent statements. The standard techniques will not work. If you say to a 5-year-old child, so this morning, oh wait, how am I supposed to do it, Jason? So this morning, you said that he touched your pee-pee in the bathroom. Well, it's not what you told Detective Hardass, is it? No, you told him it was in the bedroom, right? Okay, what does the child do at this point? Cries, looks at you blank, says, I don't know. What does the jury do? Says, we don't really give a shit where he touched her. And we hate you, okay? This is not effective, okay? It might be effective with the president. It might be effective with a detective or an informant or someone who made a mistake about an identification. I assure you, it will not work with a 5-year-old. So what typically happens? How many of you have competency hearings? make sure that the 5-year-old really can tell the difference, and understands an oath, right? So how does it go? This is how it goes in my jurisdiction. Terry, what color is this pen? Blue. Oh, that's so good. You must be a good kindergartner. Now, is that the truth or a lie? That's the truth, says the child. Now, is it a good thing to tell the truth? Yes, because what happens if you tell a lie? Yeah, mom is mad and God is so sad. Yes, now do you promise to make mom happy? And we want God to be proud of you. A promise. Okay, so if I said this pen was red, would that be the truth? That would be a lie. Now, are you going to promise to tell the truth? Because the judge is going to tell mom and God. Okay. So how many of you have competency hearings approximately like that? Okay. Does this tell whether or not the child understands what an oath is? No. The only thing this tells you is that a child has learned his colors and can tell the difference between red and blue. Okay, and typically what happens is the defense attorney just sits there or, at least tries to make the child a little happy, at the end of the and says, so what's your favorite subject at school, Terry? Oh, coloring. Awesome. That's why you know blue and red and green. I'm so proud of you. Okay, this is not useful. So I would suggest to you that the competency hearing since the Crawford case is now the most important part of your trial on child sex abuse cases, and that the inquiry needs to change from truth and lie to fantasy and reality. Because what is really important for the judge to understand before he or she allows a child to testify, and what the jury needs to understand before they make a determination about whether or not to believe the child, is to determine whether the child, not whether the child knows her colors or his colors, but whether or not the child has learned a story that's not true, and whether or not the child knows whether the stories that he or she has learned have any basis in reality. Okay, so how do you do that? And why do you do it? Let's talk first about why you do it. One, in a competency hearing, that's an opportunity. You may not have had the opportunity to see the child before. If you can, that's awesome. If you can't, it will give you an opportunity to meet the child, and it's a free test for you. The jury is not there. You can see whether or not the child is going to answer the prosecutor's questions. Sometimes you just get lucky, and the child clams up and won't answer the prosecutor either. But you want to be one of the adults that the child comes to trust and comes to like. And if you win the competency hearing, you win. If you lose the competency hearing, you have another shot at trial, and you are better. Okay? So the manner of questioning. Have props, okay? How many of you know where your local teacher store, parent-teacher store is? Okay, you want to find that. They have amazing things. You can also find them at Staples, I spend a lot of time at the dollar store. I'll confess. And the reason is because sometimes you want to give the props away to the children. And if you've only spent $1 for the markers, it's better than if you've bought them and have to spend $10. But what you can find, if you can go to the preschool and get the same ones that the preschool has, it's awesome. But all preschools have things like, and I don't know if you can see them in the back. Can you see in the back? Today is Friday. Yesterday was Thursday. Tomorrow will be Saturday. This is in every preschool, and they have all sorts of different kinds of designs, busy bees and apples and the presidents. Sometimes they have them per month, Halloween. The days of the months of the year: September, October, November, all sorts of things. Today, we're going to talk about the 3 bears. Can you guys see in the back? Raise your hand if you can see. You can't see. How far back can you see? Okay, people on this side have better eyesight than people on this side. Okay, all right. These are cutouts of the 3 bears. You can get Goldilocks, you can get anything. So you're going to buy stickers. Stickers are really good. There's no child under the age of 10 who doesn't like stickers. So what do you examine about? Do you examine about the molestation that has been alleged against your client? Anybody think that's a good plan? It's not a good plan, okay? The kid has learned that story. And no matter how many times you ask her, she will say, he touched me, I had to touch his pee-pee, and white stuff came out, okay? How many times do you want the jury to hear that? Once during the prosecutors is all you want to do. The child has learned that story. She's practiced it a gazillion times. One of the things that I have up here that I use in trial, if I think that the child has talked it, is that I had one case where I had three witnesses, 3 kids who were supposedly molested. And we had a chart of how many times she had told the story. They had each told the story. And I gave them each, let them pick out a marker of a different color, and they got to bring it home with them. And by the time we finished how many times they had talked to the prosecutor, the victim witness person, the social worker, their aunt, their teacher, all of the different people they had talked to, the children had told the story over 350 times each. And we then had an expert witness who said no one would be able to determine whether or not the story had happened because it was such bad questioning. Okay, so sometimes you can do that. You don't have them repeat it again. You just say, how many times did you talk to mom? Every day? Okay, so we're going to need to show that young children don't have an accurate sense of time, that there will be no indicia that they are lying if the child believes what he or she is saying. A child can add details to an untrue statement because the Child Protective Services worker will tell you that that is proof that the story is true, and that you can implant or reinforce a false memory in front of the jury. So we have a guest to help us today, Isaac. Have a seat. How are you?
Good.
Okay, Isaac, when did you and I meet?
This morning.
This morning. And where did you come from?
Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas. That was a pretty far way. Can you tell everybody here, how old are you?
8.
8 years old. And what's your favorite thing to do?
Math.
Math, okay. And how old are you? Did you just say that?
8.
Tell us again.
8.
8. And when are you going to be 9?
December 30th.
December 30th. And my birthday's December 24th. So how much older am I than you? Like 6 days?
No.
No, that would be silly, right? Okay, now I want to ask you about something. Do you promise all the people out here that everything you answer, when I ask you a question, that you'll answer the truth?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know the difference between a truth and a lie?
Yes.
Okay, what's the truth?
A truth is something that's real.
The truth is something that's real, and what about a lie?
A lie is something that isn't real.
Okay, is that your mom sitting right out there?
Yes.
Is she happy when you tell the truth or when you tell a lie?
Truth.
The truth. Okay, so you want to make her happy today?
Yes.
Yes, and you know what? I heard that you like things that go, right? Do you like taxis that go?
Yeah.
Okay, do you know the kind of cars that if you go like this, then they go really fast?
Yeah.
That's one of these. Would you like to have one of these?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if you tell the truth and answer the questions, then I'm going to let you have this when you leave, okay? Is that a deal? Okay. Your mom said it was okay. I checked with her. Okay. So I'm going to ask you some questions. So your birthday is in December, and how old are you going to be then?
9.
9. Okay. And what is going to happen? What grade are you going to be in school?
3rd.
3rd grade. And do you know what month you're going to start school?
I start school.
Is it on your watch?
I think it might. It might be in a month.
In a month. Do you think it might be in September? Can you read this?
September.
September. Do you think it might be in September?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And there's some months between September and your birthday. Do you know what those might be?
September, my birthday.
Do you know when? Let's see. Let me ask you a hard one. Do you remember what you dressed up like last year for Halloween?
Yes.
What were you?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump! Awesome! All right. I hope your mom has a picture and we're going to put it up on the big board. Okay. So, and do you remember what you did for Thanksgiving last year? What do you eat on Thanksgiving?
Huh?
What do you eat on Thanksgiving?
We eat special dinners, turkey.
A special dinner with turkey. So, can you help me out? This would be Halloween, right?
Yeah.
And this would be Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
right? Which comes first, Halloween or Thanksgiving? Can you show me?
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, okay. Hey, I have, and then comes Halloween. I have a question for you. Do you like stickers?
Yes.
You do. I heard that you like stickers with automobiles on them. Have you ever seen one like this with eyes that move?
No.
I'm going to give you a sticker because you did such a good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you're so polite. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is, now remember, you have to tell the truth, right? You promise? So can you tell the people out here who brings presents on Christmas?
Santa.
Santa. Do you remember what he brought last year?
He brought me this watch.
Oh, that's an awesome watch. Let me ask you this. Is it the truth or is it a lie that Santa brings presents on Christmas?
It's the truth.
Okay, because what about if I said, Santa doesn't bring presents, the Easter Bunny does? Would that be the truth?
No.
What would that be?
That would mean that Santa would bring presents on Easter.
And that would be silly, wouldn't it? Did you ever see Santa on Easter?
No.
No, he would be awfully hot with those Easter bunnies, Easter baskets in that big suit, right? You know, I'm going to give you a test to see if you know a lot about Santa. What color is Santa's suit?
Red.
Red. Excellent. Oh, I think you deserve another. I think this is a big bus. Where should we put that one?
Ow.
How about on your leg?
Okay.
Not on your sore leg that you got hurt, but on your other one. Okay, so you know that it's true that it's the Easter Bunny, right? Not Santa. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you about something else. Do you know the story about Goldilocks and the 3 bears?
Yeah.
What do bears eat? Do you remember?
The bears ate the pudding.
The pudding, okay.
Porridge.
The porridge, okay. And how many bowls of porridge were there?
3.
3. Whose were they?
They're the mom, the dad, and the little kids.
Exactly. And the Papa Bear's porridge, was it too cold?
It was too cold.
It was too cold. And how about the Mama Bear's porridge? Was it too hot?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the baby bear's porridge, was it just right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's porridge?
Porridge is something similar to oatmeal.
To oatmeal, okay. I never liked that. Do you like porridge?
I don't like porridge, but I love oatmeal.
You love oatmeal. Well, that's good choice. Okay. Okay. Now the last thing I want to talk to you about is your vacations, because I was so jealous when I met you this morning. Can you tell the people out here about going to Iceland?
We went to Iceland and I didn't sleep because it was too light.
It was too light. It stays light like all night long, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you told me that you also went to Colorado and went skiing.
Yeah.
And where else have you gone on vacation?
Indonesia.
Indonesia. You are the most well-traveled 8-year-old I personally have ever met, and I'm quite jealous. I'm asking your mom to adopt me so that I can go. And where my kids like to go was Cape Cod. Do you like Cape Cod?
I don't remember anything from it.
You don't remember anything. Did you go there?
Yes.
And what were you celebrating when you went to Cape Cod?
My grandfather's birthday.
And do you remember how old he was?
No.
And who else was at Cape Cod? Was your mom there?
My mom and my cousins and my 2 sisters and my dad.
Your cousins and your 2 sisters. What are your sisters' names?
Quinn and Audrey.
Okay, and are they right there, Quinn and Audrey?
Yes.
Doing a nice job. Okay, and who sang Happy Birthday?
Oh, we all did?
You all did. Was your grandpa so happy you were all together at Cape Cod?
Yeah.
I bet he was. Okay, you know what? We're all done. You have done an awesome job. You get your presents. Can everybody thank Isaac? Okay, you're going to go with Melanie and your sisters. We're going to have Nicole, also known as Isaac's mom, come up. We're going to help Isaac take off his mic. Okay, how many people think that Isaac went to Indonesia? How many people think he went to Iceland? How many people think he went to Cape Cod? Okay, did Isaac go to Iceland?
Yes.
Will you adopt me? Did he go to Indonesia?
He did.
Did he go to Cape Cod?
Never.
Okay, so how many people thought that there was any indication that he didn't go to Cape Cod? Okay, what was it? He didn't remember anything, but who was at the birthday party? Huh? Grandpa, cousin, so we added details, remembered singing. Okay, how did Isaac believe that he was at Grandpa's birthday party at Cape Cod?
It was pretty scary after we spoke. You said, suggest to him, and I felt like he was precocious enough that would be sort of a futile effort. But I said, do you remember we went to Cape Cod? He said he didn't really remember. And then I had given him some context, and he said, oh, I do remember that. And then recited back later, like at a time where he wasn't even being asked about the water being colder in Cape Cod than it was where we were at the time.
Thank you. She also lies to him about Santa. She tells him the porridge was too hot when it was too cold. So Child Protective Services is waiting outside. But actually, stickers are for Isaac. But you could share them. Okay, so I didn't meet Isaac until this morning, so I truly, actually I've been throwing up for the last 3 hours because I wasn't sure what would happen when he got up on this stand here. But the reality is that if children, basically 10 and under, are told something by someone who they trust, their mother, and I mean, this was not, I think that you spent about 15 minutes talking to him in total, far less. So I spent maybe 1 minute asking him if he had gone to Cape Cod when I met him this morning. Mostly he was telling me about skiing in Colorado. And he's obviously a very bright, precocious child, remembered all sorts of details, but was happy to add details about something that never happened. And this is not someone who was coached by the prosecutor. This is not someone who was coached by the victim witness person or the sex crimes prosecutor who didn't practice on the witness stand. And so it is critical for you to know, and you may have to have an expert witness to come in to talk about the fact that a child who is 10 or younger doesn't have a concept of time. They don't know, and as long as he believes it, okay, as long as he will agree with me, I don't know, does his school start in August or September? August, okay? So this is inaccurate. It doesn't start in September, okay? But he will agree with me because I was nodding and I gave him a sticker and I was nice to him this morning. And clearly his mom likes me, so I must be someone who he can trust. When I didn't correct him that Thanksgiving comes after Halloween, there is no indicia that what he is saying, he is not lying, okay? He doesn't know which month comes next. Most 8-year-olds don't know which month comes next, and if it's on his watch, that's awesome. But the reality is that what you want to demonstrate in the competency hearing and at trial is that the child's statement to the police that it happened in August, or that it happened in the summer, or that it happened every day. And you will see police officers, or you will watch a video where they talk about prior and subsequent. Okay, my clients do not know what subsequent means. I assure you that a 8-year-old or a 5-year-old does not know what prior or subsequent means. They don't know what multiple times are. Even the young girl that we had in our trial, who was 12, finally confirmed with the police officers that she had both oral sex and sexual intercourse every single day for a period of months. And there was no physical evidence whatsoever of that. She simply agreed with anything that the Child Protective Services worker and the police officer told her. So you need to demonstrate that to the judge. And you need to be precise in your language, that the child saying something with certainty does not mean that it happened, that the limitations of the questioning. I'm just going to give you one more example of a case that I had in Arizona, where a child said white stuff came out of his pee-pee, okay, a 5-year-old girl. That was the end of the inquiry, okay? So the police officer had put that in, the Child Protective Services worker had put that in, and basically everybody was horrified. You know, how could a 5-year-old child know that white stuff came out of a pee-pee unless, in fact, she had been molested? Luckily, my client had lots of money, and we had a child psychologist, and we were able to get the child to a child psychologist who had he's a play therapist. I don't know if any of you know, but these are psychologists who sort of specialize in kids who are having some problems. So we had an entire playroom, and there was a dress-up corner, and there was a Lego corner, and then there was a sand and water table. So, and this was all on videotape. So the child came in, and she told the story exactly as she had told it. You know, he touched her pee-pee, he made her touch his pee-pee. His pee-pee got hard, it got big, and then, you know, white stuff came out of it, okay? So he said to her, as no one else had, well, what did the white stuff look like? And you can see on the video, just blank. No one had ever asked her that. And so he said to her, well, look around the room and see if you find anything that looks like the white stuff that came out of the pee-pee. So she walked around the room, and she played with some Legos, and she put on some dress-up stuff, and she finally got to the sand table, and there was one half was water and one half was sand. For those of you who've spent any time in a preschool, this is not unusual. It was that white sand, like at Cape Cod. And so she said, it looks like this. And the psychologist said to her, oh, okay, well, what did it feel like? And again, she sort of looks blank, and she puts her hand in the sand, and she said, it felt like this. He said, okay. How much was there? So she takes the pitcher that's next to the water part of the table, and she scoops up the sand and she pours it in, and then she scoops up another one and she pours it in, so that there is a volcano of sand that is on the sand table. And the psychologist said, so is that what it looked like? Yes. And that's what it felt like? Yes. And that's how much there was? Yes. Because no one had practiced that part of the story with her, but she was happy to add the details to the story that was not true. So adding details to the story and saying it with certainty does not make it correct. You can show this with the child on the witness stand. So in another case, it was February, when the trial was, and there was the bulletin board in the grammar school was of the presidents, right? So it was George Washington and Lincoln, and so the child had learned the story of George Washington, who could never tell a lie when he cut down the cherry tree. So the child told that story to me, and then I said, well, so his dad didn't spank him, right? Because he told the truth. Yeah, and I said, but I bet his mom was pretty upset. Yeah, is she the one who makes the cherry pies? Mm-hmm. And I said, so I bet his mom put him in timeout, even if he didn't get spanked, right? Uh-huh. I said, well, what color was his timeout chair? Red. So the child was more than happy. Does the child have a red timeout chair? Yes, he does, we found out. But the fact that a child, so again, you want to make sure that your theory and theme is going through your entire trial. So in voir dire, they're going to be talking about, we know when a child is telling a lie. The expert witness is going to say that if a child can add details or make corrections, that means that he or she is telling the truth. Well, the fact that Isaac can correct me about when Santa comes does not mean that Santa brought him all of his Christmas presents or that the Easter Bunny came. It means that he learned a story, and that the story can be quite complicated. You know, by the time a child is 10, he or she may be able to tell you the names of the reindeers, or how many reindeers there are, or how many places Santa goes on Christmas Eve. The fact that the child is able to add more and more details does not make the story true. You want to make sure that you end as the ultimate, and see yourself as the ultimate protector of the child. That you are the one that is protecting the child from believing, and for those of you who have studied this, the McMartin preschool case and other cases where there's this sort of mass hysteria, these children grow up believing they have been molested, and many of them have problems throughout their lives. Kids who have, there was a great story in the New York Times several years ago written by a young man who had falsely accused a neighbor of molesting him. It was, again, one of these group things where 3 or 4 kids sort of were all convinced to tell this story. And two of the young men committed suicide. This guy wrote a story. He finally came clean. The prosecutor said, yeah, he still believed that the molestation had taken place. The man was in prison for years. So you want to, instead of being worried that people are going to hate you or that you are not going to be able to represent people the way that you do in a murder case or in a stock fraud case or in a case of gang violence, think that you are preventing, in many cases, the child from being used as a pawn in a custody case, being a manipulative teen who doesn't understand the repercussions of the false story that she is telling, preventing the child from growing up believing that he or she is the victim of a crime that was never committed. So the next time you read in the newspaper that a boyfriend is charged, I want you all to say, oh, I want that case. Thank you.